Are you hearing me? Huh? I can hear myself. I can hear myself. Why I'm hearing?
You are not deep. You are not deep.
You're not connected, that's why.
Huh?
You're not connected.
Oh,
Yeah, it's going here and then coming.
No, it's not connected.
Why coming here then? Speaker. If it is not coming at all.
It was connected to the computer previously, so we need to connect every time. It recognizes one device. Here.
Take out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, now that's better. You can hear them. The video almost with screen. So camera. Or on the this the mask go which then the thought the jing it's the line that you need lineage no the activity this group the gas Jada. And also now you know what to do, right? Announcement video to me, and then when we do the Manjushri, show the screen and request for the teaching until that, and then switch to the Khenpo's video. Just let it be right down this one. And then when we start, switch. Oh, its time is almost 1 minute. Yeah. I put that paper notice. Notice I do. Oh, see what. Okay, now we wait for the Khenpo, and when Khenpo comes, then you switch. with you after Khenpo sitting. Okay? Durji is there. Brandon there. Okay, everybody. All the translators are there. Khenpo phone okay.
我是玩这个古兰这个做编辑。
Looks like, right? Khenpo, please welcome.
Okay. So maybe the Toronto you can disable all the audio.
Can Khenpo hear me? And on this Vancouver organizer, yeah, tell them to invite. Okay, Khenpo already here. Okay, good. Okay, so welcome everyone again to our this program of the Heart Sutras for 5 sessions. Begins from tonight, and today is this Saturday, 3rd April of 2021, as this Payul Pemamani Center from Toronto, organizing this Heart Sutra teachings, and we invited Khenpo Sonam Nyima to teach us this Heart Sutra. So, so then, meanwhile, I wanna announce something again. So, probably most of you already attended this yesterday. So most of you know that what I'm going to announce about, that the very brief short introduction of Khenpo. I think most of you know about him. By the way, very brief, that Khenpo was born in Tibet, and then later he visited India in the Namdoling Monastery, which was established by our late Holiness Pema Norguru Rinpoche. And then he was studied all the Buddhist philosophy and everything, and then as well as he very qualified teacher, and then he also taught almost 9 or 10 years in our Manjushri Nyima Institute, which is considering among the Nyingma tradition the biggest kind of like a Buddhist research center, or on the other hand, we can say university about learning Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy. So he was well educated and renowned as a scholar, among one of the great scholar among our Khenpo in Namdoling, and he was also taught there about 10 years experience teaching the Buddha Dharma towards different faculties of students. So therefore, we are so pleased and happy to announce that we got this opportunity to able to invite him here in Canada, Toronto and Vancouver, and also all around other world, other countries, that there are a lot of participants from different countries as well. So we are so pleased and happy to announce this one. And then also that Khenpo recently opened the new Dharma Center in Vancouver, as kind of like you can visit through that website that which we were going to share
Another
in
one.
our screen. So anybody have interested, feel free to contact the Vancouver Dharma Meditation Center, and also that you can contact to direct to Khenpo as well. So that's also that Khenpo recently opened this, and he is not completely set up yet. He is still setting up this Dharma center in order to flourish the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, and benefit for everyone. So please, feel free to visit the website and contact. The contact informations you can get from the website. That's what we would like to announce once more again. And then now today, this is all now, and then we will going to start teaching soon. And then now before, teaching begin, from today we will going to follow the traditional way. So paying homage, so do 3 prostrations, and after that, reading those Manjushri supplications to grant wisdom and intelligence, so we can understand the better this Heart Sutra teachings, and as well as requesting the teach Dharma. So those we will going to follow as traditional. So first, please, everybody, wherever you are, that you can do prostrations right from there, wherever you are. And then, oh, sorry, once again, I forgot to tell you about this. So that everybody, whoever, the different language, if you want to choose the different language, you may know about it, but enter into this, the interpretation. On the screen, you may see the logo of global logo, the interpretation. Then you can choose your own channel, whichever language, whatever language options available there, and whichever language you want to hear it. We have English translator in general, and then also on beside that we have Chinese translator, and we have Vietnamese translator, and we have Spanish translator. So please choose your own language and go to the interpretation and enter into that channel. So this is every other sessions will going to be the same way. So please to know about it. And if you are using the phone, then you will click on the more, then you can choose the interpretations, and then you can choose your own language from there. So please do it that. And now we will going to begin our actual teaching. So we'll start with the paying homage. So please do 3 prostrations. Am I losing?
Karen,
Two
Muche,
Sonam.
can you wait? Tugu will join back.
No, okay.
Google lost connection. One moment.
Okay.
Me now? It's good.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so everybody, please show the Manjushri prayer on our screen. So you sorry for that I lost connection for a while. And please, if you have it, that you can read by yourself. If you don't, please look at this screen, the Manjushri prayer, and as well as at the end dedication, we will going to share on the screen as well. So please read together. Lamandang gumbo jamba yala chansa lo pange lonje jemnyen tenda nyetara nanda raza we jenyen deng jijen zeje nyejen tugar le bam zen kondo sepe chenrar mare menton dungai jiseve dozo kunla pujen tar Yan lai zhu ju yan den zon zhu daran jen zhu nyen mo nyen lo le je cha zhu zhu zi ma re men zen dong le nyu gu jen yen chen zi ra je den en da jen sa je tar zen yan den de zo ja sen tu vi gu chu cha cha Chunyen jende dale mensen jambe yang lai de umaram pazana de umara 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 Pazana de Zeden jeje chenra wazrenche tale temo membarasa kadan denje shunlo tobai loje pobe nawan zandu so senje nanje samba loyenje danje da warenje chon temo te bai Chijin Korlom Korndu so now Anna show one screen.
Tu zong zong je dang je je ngo ri da jing gor jang je cha da ga den chung men ka song je je ja de ga je do de ma me ka lang gue ko song ge ba jen de ko ne chang sa ye sha song che o da ye sen ya dang je je lan ja ne za ra dang je do do za jin be ko ne je so zong za do so Hong ge jia zong da ye men ngo ge san dong bian dong da xin chen be se sen du sa yin du ge me ge de je chu tu jin da ma ge ni je ren ji den song je kong ja Tong bema gabe gabe deri dale yin zo xiong yin zong lin bemi dong bi zhi ya na zhou rong yin lin ji zhu zhen zu bei ji yang de zong ba Manjune Dale Yenzo Shon, Itaji Language, changing Coraji, against Mamba, several looking to like the Bami between Galan de Baco. Jambagana Bemaji Dekane gave it to get into Bemacabon to Misha, this one was the tongue watching, you can move in the dentures of it. Yonjanga Pame Gale, so Gambolo Ayan de Watan, Tommy Chono Checheto, Chejan Boss. Zani Janjona Jedai, John, my single concrete payment, Sinelon Mesonsi Condition, everybody to take on your Ronson churches on Bejaju, Corate Garantini Bingo, in the Conjugavi Chetato, you better the people in the Timmy the Kaja Dai, John, Shijaganjola Jizzy, the Timmy was a young to them, Salon Janakin and Job. Nyima Kaja Dai, John, Chitaja Sebo Shoala, no that we want to shower, so on Pancho Dongaron. Nyima Chojon Bejaju, don't jump back in nature lovely, Gomilon Pobitated, the Chanting Nosh. Mebanjambe Dai, John, Congadala Ribala Batan, the Jitangamanga, so Labatadon Kuchila. Mujila Manaje Dai, John, in the Sonjikan, Yanayon, Kadisonjikan, La Pinka, Sayla Michela, so on. Nilutoba Sheva, Jinji, Lo, Pondachuji Tonka, Jirena, the Yellow Marchaba Consonda, tended them to Jambe. Sembandeba Danjen de she, like a talu than the Modanami Canada, or Kanjida Gate. Tamji get a church and Teju, Majumro, Nankata, and the Saint Tamji Chitanto. Do Danger Devalana Mebayonda, but to be Sonji, Comoran Bochelang Gabracha, and Sambajan, which would Tushiba that Jede, Sembrana shows.
Please give rise to the mind of the Bodhicitta, thinking that I am going to listen to this teaching for the sake of all sentient beings and to lead all of them to the complete state of enlightenment.
Then that concept we should then it's a donkey and Sonjiki Chinko and Baston to go in on it, Gababan sending me be Chinko. The Himbo Diba, the knee, Shiraja Parot Himbo, or Ticha Dearis.
And the topic of today's teaching is among the three wheels that Shakyamuni Buddha turned. This teaching, the topic of today's teaching is from the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. And this Heart Sutra is the contents or the summary of the huge volumes of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra.
That Shuachibala Shidanki and Nazoki Jioni and Shirshiabandaji and Nishugan Chagdus.
And before we go into the actual text of the Heart Sutra, I feel it's important first to introduce the general teachings of the Buddha in general.
Tatila Shidanki Sonje Loni Dong Abjakin Hala and Tambatubu Botini Jakardoji Dento and Nombazoba Sonjene and that you go Bastum to Goa, the Nichigures.
Generally speaking, Shakyamuni Buddha, after attaining enlightenment more than 2,500 years ago in Bodh Gaya, he has turned the wheel of dharmas for three times.
Tati Chunkorte Kodi Gasole Tomar Sanjeke Nekaranawaresena Ane San Jema Tatula Ne Sakitoda Sandimachi Distabi Church Koini Sola Tencha Kwamindo Memananda Nebacha Saki Sumana Yichene Ne Sonje Matapane Korike Sonje Ranike Kang Toba Te Ni Yanla Tara and Dayak Taki Nawres.
Soon after attaining enlightenment, this is the famous words that uttered by the Buddha, which says that the profound peace and simplicity and clear light, uncompounded nectar-like teachings that I have attained. To whomsoever I showed it or I try to teach it, they may not be able to get it. So I'm not going to teach anything and better be in the forest. That's what the verse says. And he actually at that point, he tried to teach the teachings.
손제께 강한 또 야바데 태가 아니 도잘았다야 탑게 땅디 갑슬라 아니 산제께 쳔바다 아니 샘편 소식은 강원다니 딱 튕고요 말았어 산제 바래 나좀 코알은 진데 바더니 진디 아니 산제께 강한 또 야바 태가 내가 저거 또 마도 봐 인자 아니 지가 대 고마도 바래서.
But whatever Buddha has attained the knowledge, if he teaches the one that he already attained, then there's a huge difference between us as ordinary human beings and the Buddha. So we are not able to attain or not able to understand what the Buddha is teaching if he teaches the ultimate level of what he achieved. So that's why we're not able to understand the teachings that he was trying to teach at that level that he attained.
이제디 가서 손제께 자 든다 딩라 아니 제마 손바 유바드니 지역이어레스.
So it is said that for 7 weeks after attaining enlightenment, Buddha didn't teach anything.
근데 예술라 아니 라 창파다 자진이 세진 콜로츠다 동코 동인지 되네 아니 폴체네 아니 도자라 총콜코와 코아케드니 소아타 바레스.
And after that, the king of the gods, Brahma and Indra, offering him the golden wheel and the white conch that's swirling to the right, and asked and beseech him to teach the teachings to the world.
근데 산제께 아니 제탄바 샤지 예네 네 와라나스도 팬네 네 총콜 담보네 좀데네 총콜을 맞숨고 와레스.
And Shakyamuni Buddha accepted to teach, and he proceeded to Sarnath in Varanasi and taught for the first time. That was the first teaching of the wheel of Dharma.
근데 산제께 제텐디 가슬레 아니 간에스 템바레스나 산제 랑게 간데 또 야바데 템바 탑히 마담바 제네 생전 소소소소라 최 간데 지때나 펜도 용사를 삼는 땅체네 아니 두잘라 손제 라니라 수때네 건도 야바데 카두 때야 탑히 마담바 제네 두자 소소라 간데지 거위야바 들라때네 아니 손제 최단 야바레스 템바레스.
So how did Buddha then teach to the world? He didn't teach whatever he understood or whatever realization that he got, because if in that way we will not go on to understand it. So he taught according to the disciples' need and according to the disciples' faculties and disciples' level. According to that level, he taught different teachings.
이제디 가서 다 춘땡켄티 나오니 네 산제데 푸드준바 타르친바 임바디 제거레스.
Among the various teachers, it is said that Buddha is the excellent one as a teacher.
그래서나 손제께 체 마템 번한도 도자데기 주 아니 칸다 온포 발냐와 차종지 쳔비토니 네 쳇된 거레스. 데라 간디지 거위야바.
Because Buddha, before he teaches, he knows each individual's faculties, each individual's likeness, and each individual's level of understanding, so that whatever he teaches will exactly, corresponds to that level of the individual.
근데 제고디 가서라 안에 손제께 친구 름바슨 듣고 가와 그 존센데 안에 두자라 때제네 두자라 온포라 린타 따체다 고 두자 그 삼로텔라 타이 바치레데 리디나 근데 디네스톰노노 디비존 센테네 근데 손제께 오보라니 타선의 디비기 토니 아니 청고를 말씀도 거와 근데 차대요레스.
That's why Buddha turned the wheel of the Dharma for 3 times, and that actually corresponds to the level of the disciples, those of the sharp faculty, the middle faculty, and the low levels of the faculties of the beings, of the disciples. Although the levels are infinite in number, but we can categorize all different kinds of levels into these 3 categories.
대체디 가서다 누자 온본 타마스나인다 누자 레 동보 빨 때비기 토니 니 청고 동보가 동보 덴바기 청고데 니 거와레스.
For the low level or for the entry level disciples, he taught the first teachings of the wheel of Dharma.
따디 요와라 나슬도 아니 코그조 다 가세보레 ngade zombo tsebigi ni duja tezola ani tamares.
And that first turning of the wheel was at the Sarnath near Varanasi, mainly for the 5 main disciples of the 5 main first disciples of the Buddha.
Tadi 여자들 가르쳐 말하잖아. 아니 동아 셰바자 군주 봉아자 고방은도자 람줄라 템바자 히비게 아니 토네 아니 덴바 익데 템바레스.
And the topic of the first wheel of turning of the wheel of Dharma was the 4 noble truths, that of the truth of the suffering, the truth of the sources of suffering, the truth of cessation, and the truth of the path.
다 데노니 다 동아 셰바자스. 다 동아텔라 동아테 헤고레스 나조게 다 동아테 마헤바체네 아니 동아라 데와탈롬니 좀 코알라 진데요 예바레스 대체디 가슬라 손제 가르송스나 동아 셰바자스 수마레스 제고레스 수마레스.
The first truth was the truth of the sufferings, and he said that the suffering is to be understood. We have to realize that we are suffering in this world. That's the first of the teachings.
땅 아조게 동아들라 리디소아이나 아니 동아지 동아 주의 동아 차반도지 그 동아세네 동아 숨는 히에요레스.
Generally, talking about the sufferings, we talk about 3 different types of suffering, suffering of suffering, suffering of changes, and the all-pervasive suffering. These different kinds of suffering can be categorized into these 3 categories.
또 동아 동포데 가조 파히게 토라 아니 소소 나야나고 또 동아 인자데 가조 소마게 동아이 바 초토고야레스.
The suffering of suffering, that is something that all of us can feel about it. Some like when your father's death, and plus you have sickness, you feeling your sickness, so that is suffering of suffering.
아니 주의 동아 세와데 가조 세나고 심보사네 데 두체네 아니 동보 대와나부지 자위가스 대와나부지 촌나야 디게 젠체네 네 소소 그 늘라 나잔 내려야 보다 근데 간지 아니 내가블라 대와나부지 나야 주르네 동아 그런 일 로야나 근데 네조도 히에거데 대야 아주 초트와지레스.
The second one is the suffering of change, and that also we can understand, or we can feel or experience that one. That is something initially might feel that something is good for you, something gives pleasure to you, but eventually that changes, and that instead of suffering, happiness, it gives you pain. Like, for example, a good, delicious food that you consume it. When you consume it, that's very delicious. You are very happy to get it, but eventually that won't, really digesting into your stomach, and that give you some kind of a sickness. So that's kind of suffering of change.
아주 동아 시거야 그 동아데 가르스나 차반두제 그 동아들에서 차반두제 그 동아서네 가르세 거스나 끼끼끼끼 아니 진너 근게 되나데 노치 생겨이나다 사마 끼끼끼끼 아니 메담바 주르데비키랑 이틀라 아니 히에거레스.
And the one that we need to understand is the suffering, all pervading suffering. That suffering is momentarily changing. Instantly, it doesn't stay there at all. Instantly changing, whether that be the outer world or the inner beings.
That thing I took a dungai by the Tortuga Mares.
That we are not really experiencing, or we're not realizing that that is suffering.
Teach the Casula, and a Canisumbarasana, Chiba Lantin Dawai, Dujet Dunga Pumetos. Papa Midan Dawai, Te Dunga Ija Yung Sene, and Sumbares.
What it is said that, the ordinary human beings, like a child being, they don't understand the suffering is like a hand, while the supreme Aryas, the supreme beings, they feel it like a sand. If you have a sand in your palm, you don't feel it, but that sand goes in your eyes, you can feel that pain, right? So it's comparing to like that for ordinary beings and the Arya beings regarding this suffering.
Teach the Karasumuyarasana, Nazo Lapa Nonola, and a book Tamoji Yabayina Nazo Tortuga Mares, Dono Magina. And
So the example here is like more like a hair, a very thin hair if it is in your palm. So you can't feel that in your hand.
아니 미노나 뿌트 레바이나 람산 초르토로 왔어. 되나이 아니 파바 샘체 가서 나버테 저게 아니 끼끼 근주 대화대 건주 대위게 다니 이나야 데 대화 또 넘치네 초르토고요 말했어. 아니 파바테서 아니 끼끼 근주랑 히테 아니 동학 라기 바 람산 초르네 니 지투고요레스.
But that small strand of hair, that when that enters into your eyes, then you can feel that way. You can feel right away that an uncomfortable feeling there. So what it's saying is that we as an ordinary human beings are like that hair in the palm of your hand. You don't feel it. We don't feel this suffering of all pervading suffering, while the Aryas, while the supreme beings, they feel even the smallest of these, even the very subtle, I should say, of these kind of sufferings.
티치디 가서래 아니 빼라 간디 야고여스나 땅아서 공사 강야로마지 양다버지니 마 사도바이나 아니 직 양게 체다버지라 아니 직사도도라고 들리지가는 메지 하네 아니 텔라다 드라마게 dance하다고 들리 여바지나 아니 dance데 다 대바노 아니 대야기니 양네 마 사도지 타바데 지지다고 들리지 사데게 여바 마 사소나 마기 사강니 아니 주신다 다다 생각나고 근데 그 사초초치니 구디여봐 근데다고 이나야 코에기 고 타바데 아니 지지다고 근데 지 사데게 여바데 하고마 더바체 아니 네캅게 데 dance데 그 좋아데 냥니 데데바나 이지 당아조 흘라다 미기 데와 아니 가조 그 롱션 좋아 데와 카레이나야 디소텔라 아니 네캅 디저 퉁투지 메테 데가조 름부지요 말데 퉁투지노라 데지 토비아다 데질 용약게 매장다 데 용이가 텔라 농션에 아니 그 조고 시기여 봐 어떤에 메템바이바 하고마 톰네 어떤에 근고 톰다는 거지 아니 배자도 좀 너는 배교요레스.
In the text, they give us a classic example, like we are falling down from a cliff and we're just holding on to a piece of rope. But while we're falling down, there is this delicious honey there. So, and then we are not knowing that we are falling down in this cliff, down the cliff, that honey, we have see that, and the tasting that honey, so delicious and so sweet. We just, attached to that honey, but in the meanwhile the rope that hanging up from down there, that's being eaten by the mouse. So, and then down, when we fall down the cliff, there is the water there and all the wild animals there waiting for you to fall down so that they can eat it. So we are like that in this world. We are not knowing that, this great danger being there, but for the small happiness, we're attached to that small happiness, and we are not knowing all those things and just enjoying that small and attached to that small happiness.
아좀 코아텔란 참야게 딩도 버지 산노도나 니 배자데도는 배야고데 가리야고르스나 아니 나서 그 릴 템비가 나타대도 야 싸요 샤미 또 망보 렘비기 갑라 샤바레레 렘비기 나타대도 야 싸야바이나 타이 잠소 쳔벌레 쳔와요레스 아니 나서 그 샤다 리바데도 야 싸야바이나 리자부 라블레 전 쳔와요레스 나서 그 가르세오네 다지 레게 넘버 멤버도 싸야나 아니 사뮤레 데바 히모토양 텐데레세네 아주 시아테니 망보지 니 코완드는 코르네 강한 용사를 쓰단다 보다.
So we have been wandering into this samsara for innumerable or countless number of times. So in the text, when they talk about that thing, they give us the example that if we are able to put all the blood and pus from our bodies of all life, if we put it together, it would be more than these oceans. And if we put together all the flesh and all the bones of our life, that would be greater than the Mount Meru, the higher than or much more than the Mount Meru. And in that way, if you look at all the karmas that we have accumulated over these lives, so that is something inconceivable that we have accumulated.
네 기시와 망보지 렌차르데 나토게 문이게 내가 토비하게 내가 간 태양 말했다는 바탕 나도 참아 고안을 다둔 코리 힘바레스.
Even though we have been taking life innumerable times in this samsara, but we never did anything to attain the complete freedom from this samsara or from the suffering. We are still wandering into the samsara.
네 기시와 망보지 렌차야블라 삼노 돈네 삼노 돈마이나 단다처럼 그 미제된 통도 힘을 차대요레스.
So compared to all these lifetimes that we have gone through, this lifetime of yours, of ours, is a very tiny, minute of that thing.
사버도 저런 로체 같이 레비아나 단다 그 로체 띵 누나 네 소소시에네 주된 진짜로 standard 돈다. 가장 뒤져 돈로와다 가상의 임바다 지레만도 초록 말스 뒤져 퉁퉁 힘을 띠노네 도되어레스.
And especially think about your own life now, this lifetime, how, whatever age that you have arrived at this moment, if you look back and think about the small child that you can remember until now, you would be thinking that, that is just a few years ago, or just like just like yesterday kind of thing, that you feel that much short life, that kind of short life.
이나야 가서 직 조보 신도고 여바단 메타바 레고 여바 처마도 받지네 오 드릴레 산이 집아 산이레 나니 집아 드릴레 산인 천천야바 산이레 아니 좀 로제마레 야와치 조그 테네 가서 쳐라 직 주마도 받지네 이제된데 토게서는 돈네 가서 정말 주디려스.
But still, we are not able to realize this impermanent and that we are going to die, in that way, we're not thinking about these things and always trying to make it, thinking that, oh, tomorrow I will make it something better than today, or next year I will do something better than this time. Like that, always, going after something and not thinking of or not doing any kind of a Dharma practice.
저런 거는 수삼이야 보지 돈이 단다 로체 같이 들려요나 딩하라 뭐니 드린다고 질러 소소 시와이나 아니 치마라 팽에게 쳐 뭐니 같이 룸도 삼어지 거나 소소소 마음발 가르기 레비아이마 소토고에서.
So if you look inward yourself and think, what age you are right now, and if you die today, what confidence that you have that you did the Dharma practices, that you will able to lead a better life of next future life. So if you able to think about yourself inwardly like that, then you will understand what you have done so far.
타티치디 가서 가서 차반도지 그 동알 깨지깨지 뉴랑 이 메타피랑 이때 뭐네게 소르네 또 마토 받더라 아니 가서 메세 라마데야 되네지 도로야지레스.
If we're not able to understand this suffering, the suffering all pervading, that is about this instantly changing, always changing nature of this world. If not able to understand this one, then the rest of our life will also go like this. So that's why it's very important for us to realize, to understand this, the third suffering, that is all-pervading suffering. So therefore, it's very important to understand these three types of sufferings. But then just understanding these three sufferings alone is not enough. We have to know where this suffering comes from. What is the source of this suffering? So that's why comes the second of the Four Noble Truths, that is the source of suffering. We have to abandon that source of suffering. So therefore, if we really want a true happiness, that lasting happiness, then we have to first understand these three sufferings and the source of sufferings, and then have to abandon that source of suffering. Because as long as you didn't abandon this source of suffering, then as long as you have this source, then that suffering will come back again. So that's why it's important first to understand this suffering, and then to find out the source of suffering and to abandon, eradicate that source of suffering. So what is that source of suffering, and what is the source of that source of suffering? The source of that source of suffering is the karma and afflictive emotions. So talking about the karma, that's the action. We're talking about the action through our three gateways, that of the body, physical actions, the verbal actions, and the mental actions. So talking about these actions through our body, speech, and mind, which is the physical, verbal, and mental, we have these 10 non-virtuous actions, that from the body or the physical, we have these 3: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And verbally, we have these 4: lying, causing the separations between the two friends, or and idle chatting and harsh words. And then the 3 from the mental, that is the covetousness, bad intention, evil intent, and the wrong views. So these are the 10 non-virtuous actions that we can do it through physical, verbal, and mental.
아니 다 녀모바 세디가솔라 아니 가족게 녀모바 나세야라보다 녀모바 숨세야라보다 네그 나자시던 티무 다 데리크 통네다 코파 마라톤나 된고 배맞이 몸부 해야 될 간지 어떻게 되게 영원 그리도 해결했어.
And affliction, karma and afflictions, right? Affliction or the negative emotions. That is, now we can say either the three main negative emotions or the five, or if we go detail into that, there are so many different varieties there. But mainly we talk about the desire, hatred, and ignorance. These three are the main defilements or the afflictive emotions.
아니 근데 그다 레다 녀모 봐 닝어스 비토니 다 레다 녀모 바데 근데 봐 메바조고 그래서 나저 동아스 버티레 타르고나.
So if we want to get liberation from those three kinds of sufferings that we talked earlier, then we have to understand that the source of the suffering is this karma and the afflictive emotions. So we have to eradicate this karma and afflictive emotion in order to free from all those sufferings.
다 근데 그 레다 녀모 바데 뽕알라 아니 나저게 녀보지 줄라 때네 디근간다 주비 녀보지 줄라 때네 근데 파뽕고 그러마도 다시 예요 말했어.
So in order to eradicate this, we have to apply some kind of antidote that is direct opposite to that one. This is the only way to eradicate that one. There's no other way.
다티 녀보데 가르치는 것은 람줄라 템퍼처 시디가서는 아니 람데 냠스 낸고 그래서 산제 그 말했어.
And that antidote is the third of the Four Noble Truths, that is the path. So we have to apply that thing and on the path.
람텔라 네 조람 조람 통람 강람 물로람 세네트네 람가 키게자티 해결했어.
And this path, we normally talk about the five paths. The path of the first one is the path of accumulations. Second is the path of joining. Third is the path of seeing. Fourth one is the path of meditation. And the fifth one is the no more learning, path of no more learning.
다 근데 아니 람가 때가서 그 줄라 고 거름긴도 야르메르메 컨트롤 똥치네. 아니 줄라 제와 제고디 가서 근데 녀몬데 본 녀몬다 레데 파세빗 세군디 가서네. 아니 동아솜보테야 빵제네. 그 도구여레스.
So we have to realize these five paths. So in order, kind of, right? So as we go through these five paths, so we eradicate that of the karma and afflictive emotions. And by eradicating this path, this karma and afflictive emotions, these sufferings will exhaust.
다 근데 그 람테 줄라 제군디 가서는 레다 녀모바데 파시피케 차네. 근데 동아솜보테 빵네. 데 빵피게 다 녀몬테 세피게 아니 데와 타투티 라 근데 고비 데바스네. 근데 해결했어.
So as we traverse on that path, these afflictive emotions and the karma will be eradicated. And by eradicating this one, we're able to abandon all these kind of sufferings that we're going through. And in that way, we're able to get a path of cessation by ceasing all those kind of sufferings. So this is the fourth noble truth, that is the path of cessation. And the noble truth of cessation.
대치리 가서 내가 저기 동아대 헤비도네 디본데 글로체군데 아니 군주데 빠야라 자 군주 뽕알라 람테 줄라테 람 줄라템발라테니 아니 군주다 동아니 보테 뽕니 대와 타투 탐라야 근데 그 돈이 손지 그 친구를 담보때 근데 대바기 친구사한테 고와레스.
So in this way, Buddha taught in doing his first turning the wheel of Dharma, the Four Noble Truths, in which he says that first we have to understand this suffering. There is this truth of suffering. And by understanding the suffering, we have to find out what is the source of that suffering, which is the second noble truth. That's it. And then to apply antidote for that source of suffering, we have to apply, or we have to be on the path. That's the third one. And by traversing of that path, you're able to reach the complete state of abandoning of all those sufferings, which is the ultimate level of happiness, that is the truth of cessation. This is how he taught during the first turning of the wheel of Dharma.
Teneki Dembagi Chunkur de Ane Duja Le Tampo Pam, no Turbo Region, no took on the Chena, Turbo Region, Le Tampo Batizola, and the Sonjek Chunko Tekoares.
And this turning of the first wheel of Dharma is actually meant for the entry-level people or for those low level of faculties.
Tatilla Koa Kunjudale Dongadama the Kunjudama Jude Nita, Nyande Gobata Lamni Chene, Koa Kunya Jude Nita, Namjon Jude Nichene, and the Jundek Nagani Yemores.
So in these four noble truths, there is the causes and effect for the world, or the causes of effect of the nirvana, samsara and nirvana. So two are for the causes and effect of the samsara, and two later to the causes and effect of the nirvana.
That today Jundeke Namjate Shishi Travate Toa Chebala, and the Tenjukita Tarchingores, Tarchibat Hakongores.
But in order to understand all the details of this law of karma, it's very important to understand the teachings of the dependent origination.
The Tenjukita, the Chigimbachi Tarchibat Toya Chebala, and the Tonikitan the Togores.
And in order to understand fully the dependent origination, then it is imperative to understand the emptiness, the notion of emptiness.
Techidi, and the Tomba dan Tenjunki Tanibote, Tarchibatoa Chedola, and the Teleja, and the Ting Sabra Panchene, Nikapa and Senimi Bichunkoro Seati, and the Hegures, soon Correcores.
And in order to understand this idea of the dependent origination and the emptiness, Buddha taught the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is the teaching of the Paramita, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras.
Casola, Capapan Senimi Bichunko Casola, Demba Nino Ducene, Chotani Demba Nino Ducene, Ko Tombata Tenjuni Botiki, and Navyatin Carson Chansongaji, and Ko Tenueres.
And during the second turning of the wheel, he taught based on the two truths. And in that, he taught all the details of the emptiness and the dependent origination. And that's mainly for the middle level of faculties. And the topic of today's teaching, the Heart Sutra, is also from this second turning of the wheel of Dharma, where Buddha teaches about the emptiness and the dependent origination.
La Kanichi Nigu Batella, Nikapama, Tama, Niba Nabali Jipping Chungor City Castle, and the Cronche Coron Neton Karim Bate, and Jigin to Tembicane, Chunkorte, Sumbares, that the member on the channel.
And then going one step further for the Shaf level of faculties, he taught the third wheel of Dharma, in which he really taught the reality of the things that he's taught about the emptiness and the dependent origination. So in this third wheel of Dharma, which he normally says about the discrimination of the doctrine, he talked about the true reality of all the things.
Teaching Castle, the Kantamiki Castle, and the Mazok Sempi Chuni, and Wasaviki Rangi, and Mo Tomba, Rangi Wasaki Rangi, and the Ko G. Tatayundu Rangi, we begin to Kain Bate, and it's Jigin to Chene, and the Tembachi.
And in this third turning of the wheel of Dharma, he talked about the nature of the mind, which is a clear light, whose essence, and this essence is the emptiness, and the nature is the clear light, or something that indestructible nature.
Tichirika sonjeke dujaki rimbala techeni ni chongo rimba sonko swantini chagyoris.
So in this way, Shakyamuni Buddha has turned the wheel of Dharma for 3 times based on the disciples' levels.
Ta tindike sonjeke chongo rimba sonko ne sonje nyangele ku nyangele hibiki. Da Jesus legro ta tindichigla Jesus la ane ngacho ke tiki sonjeke sungte zola la himju chene sungte zoke kwa lenya ke ane tumta de la tumta yichung songares.
And then after passing away of the Shakyamuni Buddha, later the later disciples there, in order to understand his different teachings, we have these 4 different traditions that arise in India.
Tatila ka tongpo demba ki chunkor ke gonden yigane tiki gompa ten lenya la ane chada mawa tan do de pa asene ne tumta ni chung songares.
And based on the first wheel of the wheel, turning of the wheel of Dharma, there's the two categories of which is the Chetamawa and Dodeba, that's the Shravaka Yana, and the Swatantrika.
Da te nipo tike ka tembo demba ki chunkor ke gonden te ane lenche ne ane chotam ki toni ta dame sa rabo ta tindike ta ka papa ta tama ki hewa na yegyo mares konza ke dame tsam to ne ane roni ya kowandele troya ke lamji yegyo res.
So in this first turning of wheel of Dharma, unlike the second turning of wheel of Dharma, we're talking about emptiness, all phenomena. Here, in this first turning of wheel of Dharma, is talked only about the selflessness of the person, and then to get the liberation for oneself.
Tichi di kasolo ka tombo demba yi chungo ko di kasolo demba yi ki ten ko toni konsa ke dame ba toni roni troa toa tende ji ke ane ten ko ka tombo ki demba ki gonda yingo di kasolo di yi ga chene jinyu te zo ke ane ko chara mawa dan do de ba te zo ke je hiego di kasolo ane chio tam je toni da dame yin ba da ane chongchu ke semse ya de sem chama ke je ne nyam sun lenge ya do tende ke je di hiego ma res.
So in this first turning of wheel of Dharma, it's not talking about the bodhicitta or the notion of the bodhisattvayana or thinking of all sentient beings. They're not talking about that thing. Here is talking about realizing the selflessness of the person and to get the liberation for oneself alone. So in this way, this turning of the wheel of first wheel Dharma, we have this, Vaibhashika and Swatantrika, 2 schools here.
Today ke ka tombo demba ki chunko tan chara ma tan do de ba ki xiachu yi ya chene ane nga zo ke ko ti ki ma junda bo ti thio mo ya la ane ta nga zo Sri Lanka tan ba ma da te zo ke tan da de Thailand da te zo ko nyam so ne de ya ke ta nga zo ke tani ti je na theme te ba me ba se go re tin sa ne pali ki ke to le yu bi ke sanje ke chö nyam so ne nge se da bo te zo ke ane chiji ti cha go re standa.
And the main lineage holder nowadays for this lineage is the ones that being practiced in Sri Lanka, Thailand, and many of these, Southeast Asian countries there. So we normally call this as a Theravada tradition, or sometimes even Hinayana they call it. But nowadays, mostly they're referred to as the Pali traditions.
Te chidi kasula, kocho ki tso karse kore nyamlenda boda tsandanda bo karchi kore sana. Ane ko sonje xia yubi ki kapsula, ane 고 개발 농양조게 아니 누이기 남야 근셔게 돌아 아니 고 미세게 아니 담대진 냐면 나데 차거레스.
And the main practices that they emphasize is on the Vinaya rules that Shakyamuni Buddha has set forth while he was still alive and while he was teaching. So these followers right now, they emphasize more on these Vinaya rules.
아니 아까 바반 선생님이 비춘 거 거한테 대단 타마 니보텔라 아니 고발랭 거라 다 중다 오마바다 산상바스 니숭숭하레스.
And for the second and the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, the masters who elucidate on this one, then we have these other two schools, that is the mind-only schools and the middle way school.
나 대조게 룬테조데 손제게 레자게 돌로 숨어야 마다 아저게 대박 캠보세 나 대조 값을라 근데 종주게 스탠다보다 최단계 돈이마 어떻게 그한테 좀 시대거를 시행을해서.
And these two schools are we call it the Mahayana schools. And in this school, we're talking about the bodhicitta, the bodhisattvas, and talking about all sentient beings.
나 근데게 최대 얘기하자니 근데 나저게 자나라 다 코리아다 니 자판라 단도저게 나저 대박팀비게 너데 대조그 공부 얘기하자니 장주게 샘다 돈이라서 봐 대조그 단데 아니 고 잔다 제는 공부다 냠슬나 봐 드릭 돈이 아니 고 대견게 진진바 어떻게지 차노거스.
So the lineage of these two schools of the Mahayana, which emphasize on the emptiness and the bodhicitta, is being spread in China, Korea, Japan, and Tibet, and all these areas.
다디 토라 손제게 근데 전거는 봐 숨데 누잔 토모와라 용라 제네 하는 아주 찍레 다다마다 그게 되면와 소마라 용라 제네 숨야게 아니 전국 얼마 숨고 와데 드니지게 그랬어.
And these three turnings of the wheel of Dharma by Buddha is in general terms for everybody, whether that is being a pure perception or not.
네 데이기 땐돌라 누잔 토모 마이바 아니 미세게 아니 거지 가세고래 드네라 아니 소한 하게 전거 아니 참래라 손제 고 단다 지 이담하이 샤세 그 말에 그 지클라이 모래야 미존에 되는 순야바 등걸 그 소나보다 근데 네고 두자 레타바 레중글라 네 미세게 고 되는 전거 학 전거 때 고와서 모여서.
And for those uncommon and special disciples, Buddha taught the Vajrayana secret mantra teachings. And for that secret mantra teachings, Buddha might or might not have been in the form of the Shakyamuni Buddha. He might have appeared in a different deity. For example, during the teaching of the Kal Chakra, he was not in this ordinary Shakyamuni Buddha form. He was in the form of the deity, and that through that deity taught the just Kal Chakra tantras.
어떻게 지디가슬라 근데게 안에 가르세그래 고 상황하게 청코르단 간 타마 바바단 타마게 청코르 땡돌라 안에 상황하게 청코르 때야 nem바게 디게 지바나보다 디게 냠내 제촉때 안에 버지 논텐센데 담니다 벌파 단도야 버다 히말라이 초라 단도야게 안에 나저 그 논텐센데 동페 진지라부터 차로거스.
So this lineage of the secret mantra teachings, plus the Mahayana teachings of emptiness and dependent origination, these lineages, combined these two lineages, has been spread in Tibet and to various Himalayan regions.
어떻게 지디가슬래 아니 나 까동보 냄바지 청코르 기체니 아니 공가서 단달라 여기밖에 주진지 맞대도데 아니 단다 공디시 받나 이제네 Teba members and Pali Tole Chujin Ching it so ina. Nikan Papi Caps Yejo, the Tamika Caps Shinjoke, and Tandatezo, and Manezo Mares, the so Karsota, at the so Namek Mola Diba Mares.
So for those followers of the Theravada traditions or the Pali traditions who mainly follow the teachings of the first turning the wheel of Dharma, they don't accept or they don't really follow the teachings that has been taught in the later two turnings the wheel of the Dharma.
Teba Chembo Kapapa and Sini be Chungo Koya, T. Jes Jovik, any that Janala Tasson ni ko Japan Korea that Soloma Taya Joke and that's okay. Teba Chimiki ko taken by the Zote Nina. Ya Katombika ni Hibi Tandates on Soma Tentola, Nika Papa than Tami Kasu Chenjoke, Bonida, Jonjuk Semla so Batezo and then in Higurete, Inaya Sangak Kami Hibi, Yaneke, Batezo, ya. The Yameno Duni Higio Maris.
And for those followers of the second turning of the wheel of Dharma and the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, which mainly emphasize on the emptiness and the dependent origination, the lineage of this has been spread in China and Korea and Japan, in these countries. But the practice of these regions, or the follower of this tradition, doesn't include the Vajrayana or the secret mantra teachings.
Tandata con Nalenda ne Jujene, ne Kenlop Chosone, ne Bella Tiger Joke, ne go Tanda non Chokyaneti, Nola, ne Katombo can Hebike, ane ko Yanek Batia, Hegore, Kapapa and Tamika can Hebike, and ne Chonjuk Santa Tony Greba, what the Zoyan Hegore, and they take it $10, then they go Gonza Go Church and Misala Sunga Joke, Sangaki Batisoya, Nemchene. Ni chatswanda wiki ni ko nyame no la dijene ni higores nyamslengores.
So for those traditions that's been spread in China and Japan and Korea, they include the first returning of the wheel of Dharma, and they mainly follow the second and third, but doesn't include the Vajrayana or the secret mantra teachings. And then we have these teachings that's been spread out in Tibet and the other Himalayan regions. And that's mainly from the Nalanda traditions. During the time of the King Trisongdesan in Tibet, the great master Shantarakshita, and the Padmasambhava, the three masters, two masters plus the king, the three of them, spread out the teachings in Tibet and other Himalayan regions. And in this lineage, we included the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, as well as the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is about the emptiness and the dependent origination, plus also the secret mantra teachings that has been taught for the special uncommon disciples by the Buddha. So in a way, this lineage includes the whole of all the teachings of the Buddha.
That's the nature of Tambaina. And then Tandanga took a logic secretary Carse, that Silaga, the Mama Cholo Chibiki, and Eco Pali Tole Biki, and then Che non Chenya, but it's okay. And then go Chu Jire Mado, Chu Mampuji, and then Mampomba Senainda, and then Nilemazo Basenainda, and then Tidik Tony, Jachuan of Chita, chose Chevan of Chadiores.
So in this way, the Pali tradition of the southern lineage, they sometimes call it, is only follows the first turning of wheel of Dharma. In that way, it doesn't include or doesn't accept the other traditions. So in this way, the scope of their teachings, of their learning is much smaller and is only, a partial teachings of the Buddha.
The Chidi Gopsula, and go Chulu de la Yams Lambiki. Tige Tawada, Tuntada, Tige, Ani ko Yamne Tiki on to Cheswaina. Ani Chedanke Sonjika Kala Tuya Yoreka Tombo Dembaki, Chunkol Tuori, Tige, Ani ko Jason Jubi tenchu tu ya yore ko Kurang la ane gopada jumsenda ane ndrebu danda yabachi chadiyores.
And although these follower of the Pali traditions, they have this, practice, they have their own practice or based on the sutras of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, and also the great shastras that has been written by the great masters of the past. So in this way, they can practice and they can also get realization based on their own practice.
Yinaya sonje ki chungo rinpa sumla soba sonje ki chungo koche chamala samna de tone keje dike soba ina taduya ani ko narma senpa la senayenda chama thongba di yinba ji char sena ani maliwa meba jires.
But looking holistically through all the teachings of the Buddha that he taught during his lifetime, then we can understand, or we can say that that's only a partial teachings. It's not the complete teachings. I mean, the followers of the Theravada tradition.
Ani teni teik ta tele chan kon za cheru ra bachena ani tanda janale le targanjo da Japan da teni Korea la targanjo ke tepchen ba senayenda ani tende ke Japan jingen te zote ka papan tseni mebi ke gonda zo jibi ke ani toni da chansen ke remba ani ta ka tongpo ka ne tebi ke ani dui ke nabya te zo yinda yin demba yinda yin o tende ke thone ani ko nyamne remado ka tongpo ka ni sheba da baba da ka ni shebi ke toni ta ta chonju ke sem ke remba remado tadu tende sanga ke remba te zo nyamne da ning ki chanswara mebara chagores.
And then going one step further, those traditions that have been spread and being practiced in China, Korea, and Japan, they follow the mainly about the second and third turning of wheel of Dharma, which is about the Mahayana, and they practice mainly about emptiness and the bodhicitta. And of course, they also include the teachings of the first turning of wheel of Dharma, which is mainly about the Vinaya practice and the Four Noble Truths. But still, they don't include in their practice about the secret mantra or the Vajrayana practices.
That today ke any chujin zabanda senayenda any taken but the joke la samna tanso inaya sonji ke kat parba da thamala tu ne sonji ke kanon la ya tunia heju yorela ni jeju ke tenchu te no la ya heju yaba ko gyoba da jumsen ane jebu yaba ji ni chadiores.
But the follower of this tradition, mainly based on the sutras that has been taught in the second and the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, and there are also other great shastras of the ancient Indian writers as well. And for those practices, they definitely have their own purposes, and they can reach the enlightenment state as well.
Yinaya ane sonji ke chunko rinpa korwa chasangi ki toni sanu tonsona taduya ane kama sonwa yinba kekena mandiwa miyomares.
But thinking about the whole teaching of the Buddha, we can still say that their practices lack something. It's not total complete one.
Ta nane dane jibi ken keno chesone pyola la jiganjo te ane ka tongpo ki rinpa ane denpa yidang ane ndui ke nongka ki rinpa teso ya ane ko se mi midin la soba tene rado chunga ni zonde tanda patala ndui ki rinpa ta teso ya nyamne zone te yore la ane chansong da tongi ki rinpa ane ko teso ki rinpa te ya hachong ki jachambo ting sabo ane ko jache shebi solta samo tawi sosi ne ludu di jiba ta tome ni jiba ke ane chongju ki sem ki rinpa ta tongi ki rinpa te chasangi ane yores.
And the one that has been spread in Tibet was mainly from the Nalanda tradition. And from there, it is spread to Tibet. And in that, we have the complete teachings of the Buddha being practiced there. From the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, we have this Vinaya practice. during the imperial time in the 8th century. Around that time, we have this monkhood, who ordained monk, the first 7 ordained monk. From then onwards, going still now, we have this lineage or traditions of this monks, which is the Vinaya from the first turning of wheel of Dharma, and also the teachings of the 4 noble truths from the first turning of wheel of Dharma. And then from the second and the third turning of wheel of Dharma, we have this practice of bodhicitta and emptiness. Actually, we have this both 2 traditions that's been spread out in India. We have both of those in Tibet, that of the vast and the profound lineage. Those originated from the great Indian master Asanga and Nagarjuna, and both of these lineages has been spread and widely practiced in Tibet.
The tentle sonji ke misi ane konza leda kawa dembake tendela goche ne sonja jo ke sanga ke nyamne te tonya ya nemche ne ane sonji ke chungko rimba kutsele sonja jo ke chungko rimba chasang ke ane gondente ko nyamne cheji yabara uchi ane goji non tente chadi yores.
Plus the lineages, we have the lineage of the secret mantra teachings as well, that has been taught by the Buddha only for those special uncommon disciples. That teaching has also been spread in Tibet and being practiced still today.
다 되네 제디 갑술래 미 단도 다 가리시고 있으나 제당게 안 손제 그 전코 림바다 디 냠네 제통 토라 아니 림바다보 칸데 여르세네 디시고 있어.
What I'm trying to explain here is, in general way, of the different lineages being still survived in this world, and what kind of practices are being done in these different lineages.
제디 가서니 단다 가리시고 있으나 나저 안에 테메 바세나인다 아니 다다게 발리게도 여바 취지바다 아니 대견바다 아니 상아 냐냐 바테죠 소소 쑥 제라 주위에나야 네 대조게 짠단 제조다 냐네 제조다 아니 지게 근셔게 림바 이지잖아 제바레스 이나야 디스티즈 만다바 용되거레스.
What I'm trying to say here is now all these different traditions, whether that be a Theravada, Mahayana, or a secret Vajrayana, the foundation-wise, all of them are mainly same thing, although in detail there may be some here and there differences.
대지디 가서라 대저 som자데 손제게 깔라 두네 ndogya 바지다 아니 가르세고 그바다 좀세 아니 이어봐 차대바를 찍고 차고 그랬어.
And all these 3 lineages, they all of them based on the teachings of the Buddha, and they have their own merits and they have their own reasons for the practicing their traditions.
어때지도 가서 맞아 가디나야 초지술 훔체네. 고페나 고 빨리게도 옆에 주지바테 저게 안에 지게 개천보다 사천보지 등에데 근데 대전 바다보다 상하냐네 바데 저게 개천보다 마치디 값을래 항상 산다고 제네 아니 지워지 넣어야 봐. 너나 대전 바데 저게 주지바데 저게 사천보다 개천보 지된제데 아니 야 빨리게도 연주도 저게 대장 많이 받아고 들리 통디 값을래 내가 저 항상 산다고 제네 지워지 넣어야 지라한테 그 바데 좀세 미우 세대에 봐 연다도 좀 넣어야 돼. 들리 삼는 동안
So then when you see somebody practicing Theravada traditions, and then when they hold their own tradition as a very sacred and don't hold others' traditions that much sacred, or the other traditions holding their own things very high, and then the other traditions not that much. When you see some kind of like that, you should not be too much amazed, or you should not be wonder so much about that thing. They have their own reasons, or their own following their own traditions.
대지디 가서라 소소 강라 예순 주위에는 디게 쳐도 냐네 제네 니 연다들라 거바 좀생 이어바지 산노 동네 니 대바데 무비체데 개체모레스.
It's important that whatever you follow their tradition, but also respect and have faith to the other the lineages as well.
지디 가슬라 나조 다직 손제게 청korko와 용조 가 용조게 공바데 가왈 니기리 간데디 차총하라버지 차그래서 게리시와 있나 단단히 공도시반난지 레스 이나야 온디 야와레 네 두아레스네 게슈기 메스 카스나 야다 두세아데 소솔 펜토마도 사야 삼노 동야레 펜토마도 세아데 소솔라 아니 주단 참마자 다야레스.
So in this way, when I'm saying that, when I say that, and the one that being spread out in Tibet has the complete teaching all this Buddha, including the sacred Vajrayana, I'm not saying that this is the best, the others are not that good. I'm not saying that way. Whether it's best or not is up to the individual, up to the individual levels and up to individuals, affinity, and it all depends on that thing, whatever you study or whatever you are connected with.
언제지가 스페나 맨 조사게 나저그 닥스도 언데 맨 조사지는 로와이나 맨 공천보 춘춘 아니 맨나 주자야 좀 남다 예시그레스 이나야 소소 간데 나기요 소소를 가르고 봐 소소 삼비게 펜데 소소를 펜 토시데 야시 차데어마도 니 공체와다 내 논에 맨난 디체와레 데야와레스 하는 거지 소소 근근이 계속 말했어.
For example, if you go to a pharmacy at a drugstore, there may be many different types of drugs out there and very different rates there. The prices also differ. The ingredients also differ. Some have very good ingredients, some have not so. But you cannot say this one is the best for all things. It depends on what you need, for your own sickness or diseases to eradicate that one is what you need. It depends on that one. You cannot just label and with one brush, you cannot say that, this is the best for everybody.
어때지디 안에 가서겠다 베진 논텐 단단 가서다 베진 논텐 냠내 봤더니 차이디 가서 베진 논텐 논로라 안에 상하게 냠내데 레기어레 상하게 냠내데 안에 고 조간다야레 안에 지들이 고지 소주기 림바케 몽포지 용구여레스 라고미아레 조바샤미아레 통가샤미아레 군다샤미아레 들레게다 지 나바체아레다 들레고 림바 몽포지 용구여레스.
And right now, we are the follower of the Tibetan Buddhism. And in the Tibetan Buddhism, we have also this, as mentioned earlier, the secret Vajrayana or the mantra teachings as well. And in this way, we have these different kind of ritual things that we do. We have different kind of meditations, different deities, and we have this pictures, pangas, and statues of all different kinds of deities.
이제 가서 헛가도 따와이나 땅아서 그 논체 그 자바데 잠니제 스케치기도 아니 사다 콘다도 되고도 가서래 아니 카동미 데딩에 트레드 맨다코 맨다바 트레단다다 누다데 코댕에 근데 하나 잡았더니 짱짱 지하다보다 통야다보다 누세야다보다 양 아주 그 조직인다 차데 pon자 타도 이마도 시에운도 이나야 라다 트레단 지하다 다 아니 근데 제군도 가서래 야이 보모티죠 제된저다보다 근데 캔타보다는 마본 제아도 상하다고 근데 그 레톤 포밤 가서고다 베진 논데냐네 징에 사바트 토케 근데 그 저아야 마본 유위어라 초시바지레스.
For many of the new to the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, questions arises that Buddhism is mainly about the compassion and loving kindness, but in the Tibetan traditions, we have these different kinds of tangas and paintings and statues of very wrathful deities, where they're holding some weapons like a sword, arrow, spears, all those kind of things. And sometimes you have this other, like although, Buddhism is mainly talking about eliminating the desire, hatred, and ignorance, but for the desire or for the lust thing, their depiction of the god with the deities conjoined with the female together, which is kind of exposing all this kind of thing there. So wondering, how come these are there in this Tibetan tradition.
Inaya Tati Kadisene Virgin non some kind of tangersana. Katompo Dembaji capsule here Yanjuki Dembaji Dante Mochevache. Tit and the Kapapa come here Yambi Tony Rimbata, Ani Chonju Sank Rimbati Soya, Flojon Tapsimbachene, Dan Tason Hakovache. And the Tiki Cap Ganla Gan Tamani Hebiki, and the same Kichuni, Saton Granjitian, Mochevache. Tito Chazan Jingo Chibiki Tony, and the Sangak Rimbati. Ko Nyamnechiati, Doguris.
So the actual way of doing this secret mantra practice is supposed to be after going through the Sutra's teachings, mainly first the Four Noble Truths as taught in the first turning of wheel of Dharma, and then at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma about the emptiness and the bodhicitta, and then during the third turning of the wheel of Dharma taught about the nature of one's own mind, which is the emptiness and clarity. So after learning and going through all these three steps, then only one should engage into the study and practice of the secret mantra teachings.
And the Mebarum Kada Dasha Chebala, Tanjutawan Tatangers. Pena Zokin Tawa de Yontapachi Chung Gila Cheva Chebala, Tombo Muma Kanishibiki, Uma Tanjubiki Tawatila, and the Hojon Tatubaji Chego Reda Sandabo, or Tindikin Rotank Tony Pejino Denke, and Yamnet of Ligures.
And Mipam Rinpoche, one of the great Nyima master, had said in one of the texts that in order to completely understand and appreciate the meaning of the kata, which is the primordial purity, one need to understand the madhyamika, the middle way teaching of the emptiness, the highest middle way teaching, that's prasangika. You need to understand that one in order to understand and fully appreciate the teachings of the Dzogchen.
Sangaki Yameta Choga, Grimba, Candid of Jinaya, go Karsagore. Namta Gosum, da, and so don't say yes, right? Take it, get a cigarettes.
So what?
Tenzin Namson, Namta Gosum Senanda, Tenzin Namson, ko, so don't say you can jet up say again. But Tenzin Namson said the castle, ko more tomba, and tomba nichi thing in the Tema maybe thing in the Taiko Cartegoreta Tombo Tony Chetam, the Tony Gron Yita. Take it endola, Tony King only, and the Chonchuk Seman Hinge the J. Tendeke Tony that Hinge is soon to you big Tony in the Lagomba. Kanji, Sangok Yane Kandichi Inaya, and the Tony that Hinge soon to you in Yanaki. Number going to get out of a trick,
So no matter what type of secret mantra practices you do, or whether that be a ritual things that you do or meditation that you do, that should be mainly based on the three types of samadhi and the four nails that binds the life force together. That's another teachings of the secret mantra teachings. Based on these things, you have to practice the secret mantra. So the three samadhis, that is the first one is the emptiness, the samadhi of emptiness. And in that emptiness, talking about, and based on that emptiness, by having realized that everything, all phenomena is empty in nature, then you generate the bodhicitta and the compassion, and you meditate on any type of deity that you are meditating upon. So that emptiness and conjoined with the bodhicitta is the must to understand or to meditate or to practice any type of the secret mantra teachings.
Tenichedicasule penata, la ji talk in number, Anichi Sanjak Namding at the Pena Pama de Zoke, same thing, and Nipo with the Koji so Jabal Joyala Sentini and Tayada Sevik Ranginaya Zamzana and the chick Tolomic number 10 Sene and the Kapjetoya Rabada Tenida Chegaya Younger was Tena Yichine Duja Richila and it Chambata Hinje Hiwa Chanchan Matua Tesola and it ko ngô de hinje da chamba toni kra yin ngô ina ya namba la de tene ni dugaya ke duja richi la onto chene de chene yungu yores.
So for those wrathful deities, where you see them as really wrathful, holding different kinds of weapons like sword, spears, arrows, those things are for some type of disciples, for those disciples who are not able to subdue them through the peaceful means. So then they are depicted or arising through this wrathful way, although their main nature, the thing is the compassion and the emptiness and the loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, but in appearance, they appear as a very wrathful deity, to tame them. It is, for example, like parents, when their child is not acting nicely, when they are being naughty, sometimes you had to be, little kind of wrathful, little stone to tell them not to do those bad things. It's similar to that one.
Perna ngato ke chen zida wachila sanotona ani chenezi singende ani tyusom ke sonje thamji ke ani hinje de ani lak ngo shagu de kasole ani ngato chenezi ke namba shagu ya bachi chegores.
For example, Avalokiteshvara, when we talk about Avalokiteshvara, it is said that he is the embodiment of all the Buddhas, the 3 times of the compassion, embodiment compassion of all the Buddhas of the 3 times. When it personifies that compassion, it is him, the Avalokiteshvara.
Chenezi de ke ani duja tendik riken ko tapo am tuikin ko tuik tone namba ke tone dugunge riken te tola ani tamring ke kuriken chene tamri senge de ta ngazo ke yo ko idam ke no ne tho ne jik thagare o tende ke namba yen chene ani ko dujan duya ba o tende chene ngazo ke sanga ke namba no la chenezi senge Tisum ke sonje tanji ki ani hinji ki rangi ba shenezi te doja ko shive mituba tape dugaya te tola tamri ke mola ko yene namje tamba o tinde ke samna ta nga zo ko tho ke ba te so yungu ya respense ki da ba chi chena tinde re yama choma tinde ke jumsen re ni yode ba chires.
So Avalokiteshvara appears, as the personification of the compassion of all the Buddhas of the 3 times, and he able to help and tame all the beings mainly through the peaceful ways. But there are some beings who are not able to tame it through peaceful means. Then, for those beings, he, arises or in the form of a wrathful one, and in that wrathful form he is called Hayagriva. So he's not calling him Avalokiteshvara at that point. So this is a different manifestation for those beings who needs to be subdued through the wrathful ones. So this is just one example of how this wrathful came into being. So in this way, there are many different types of deities, and they are also like that,
Chidi kasula tambi seva tiya ko dan nga chok namba la ani tho ani ko juba ko ding shana chabuji nga chok chi chi ko gomba da duba da wa chi ya na bi chi ya na ya dana genesis ran cha de re genesis sa ti song ko sonji dan ji kin ji de ran cha de res.
So Hayagriva in this way is in the wrathful form. When you look at him, he's in the wrathful form holding a stick there. And when we do meditation also, we do meditate and in that way. But in actuality, he is the Avalokiteshvara in a different form of Avalokiteshvara.
따티지디 가서 대나기 전에 아니 차바게 고 남바 여행게 고다 고대 조이나야 아니 대나기 전에 아니 고용 즉 시와다 초라고 되는 랑기 도와 많이 봐 차비기 남바게 돈 누구야 그 리젠트 돌라 요 차비기 남바게 돈이 니 고리 다한테 차거랬어.
And in the same way, those beings who are not able to tame it through the peaceful and wrathful ways, there are some other who are able to subdue it through the desires or through the lustful depiction. That's why we have this, some deities conjoined together.
뭐다 드네기 돈이 있는 가서게 농치 시게 남야다버디 아니 롭장지 또 거야 돼 배마시 개념부지래서 소식이 통자 퇴자들 자셔야라.
And this is just all the general teachings of the Buddhism, and it's very important to understand the general outlines of the whole of Buddhism, so that you can have, as a good base and have this direct or the bird's eye view of this whole teachings of the Buddha.
그때 그 자든당에 말아 요구랬어. 빼나가서 단다 단다 마히는데 저 뭐다 된데 지디 가서래 간지 안에 버지 논텐디 간다고 차대였으나 저 따와데 같은 것중에 아니 즉 따와데 넣었으나 네 곰바다 쩌바다 드레버 참아 넣는다고야 봐. 근데 따와들 더 템포 제거 봐. 데 따와데 더 템포도 템포지 유알라 롭좀 티치 바지 제거 봐. 근데 그 나렌다데 그 유니버시티 롭좀 제사 그때네지 되게 휴전선에 민도 되게 검신다버지 제네 아니 버지 논텐노라 아니 롭좀 휴전 뭐 제거야다 아니 되게 제약이 아니 그 장대라고 제야돼 좀 전에부터 차대였어.
So in the Tibetan tradition, that is mainly influenced or spread out from the Nalanda University of ancient India. So we place main importance on the weave. So if we don't have this weave correctly, then our conducts and our meditation, our result all be wrong. So that's why we put great emphasis on this weave. And to understand this weave correctly, it's very important to study, and study for a long period of time. So, and this is mainly from the traditions that was being carried on in Nalanda.
어때지디 가솔래 맞아 가디 가르세나 안에 럽종 슈템부지 제약이니서 되는 하덴도 근데 나르부지나 남돌리라 럽종 제바레 남돌리라 로콜라 럽센노를 산노도나 로 주바돌라 아니 인도케 단다데 가동보다 바바기 공된 갑 동보다 바바 타마기 공된의 집이 인도케 아니 가다 땡큐되죠 라 럽종 제바레스 타마 로스톰라 이니 아니 상가케른바 데라 럽종 제아드니 차데레스.
So in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we place very importance on the studying of the Buddhist philosophical things or Buddhist views. So, and we study many years there. For example, the one that I studied at Namtralung Monastery, and there we have this 9-year curriculum. And for the first 6 years, we mainly study on the Sutra, this Sutrayana, the sutras, and the Shastras that's being composed by the other later great masters of India. And for the final 3 years, we studied the Vajrayana sacred mantra teachings.
이제디 가슬라 인도케 노나 인도케 ke lobjong ke rimbate 아니 같이 소설에 즉 제바 있나야 되게 상하게 냠냥게 림바다 초하게 림바다 지게 나데 라곰 하디야 림바테 솔라 닝이 히 토르 도야리 마도 아니 되게 아니 지게 노 롭종 단도게 다지 예비 림바테 조게 상하게 냠냥테 조지 단다메덴 바다 지 무빈네츠다 민팀바다 아니 tendichi namya yungu mares ko do ke rimba de jetsam ki so so le chen phobo ya ba de sam ke nga ke nyane de ani samoda ani ko garse kore jachewa ting saba yibaji ngo thoji ya ba res.
So the more you study on the Sutrayana, the most you study on it, the more you have the understanding of the Sutrayana, the better conviction or the confidence that you will have in the secret mantra teachings. You will never have these two kind of separated from one another, like it's not related to the other ones or is nothing to do with the sutra or something like that. You will never come across like that. The more you study the sutra, the better you understand and the deeper understanding you will be about the secret mantra teachings.
라덴도 당아조게 고 뒤저 희망가 도네 아니 뒤 두루두루두루 로고 메소 텐전 모로 녀모 체르 로가 그 뒤저 들라 대다 빠피기 냠보지 그거요레 들라 아니 상하기 냠네디 아니 고 니바 체르다 아니 띵사바다 자체와 차와지 아니 저런 저 협정 진행 예신 동지야 버지레스.
And especially during these degenerated times where all these emotions and negative emotions, afflictive, more spread out during this degenerated time is very important, imperative to study and practice the secret mantra teachings because it is more efficacy in the secret mantra teachings. And that, if you study more and more on these things, you will kind of understanding or realization of and experience that, this secret mantra teachings will be more relevant and more suited for this type of time, this degenerated time.
다 들리지기 토네. 다 들리 혈안이고. 혈안이고 근데 과도이나 하고 맞다. 간이만 시키는 뒤져 쳐로서.
So we spent all this time for the general teachings and don't know where this Heart Sutra is now. So we don't have time for this Heart Sutra for today.
이나양 아저 그 단다 때쪽때 자 최산의 삼마지 단 통과야 돼. 백개청부지레스. 대마이나 소소 지 초기마도 초기만 통응데 가서래. 아니 총에 쌓야다. 아니 지 근데 그 고노태베 때문에 몽포주 용그레스. 때디지데 가서 대쪽 리데 네고 법전원의 지지인진의 만드시게 되나 용그 말했어. 대지데 자 최산에는 아주 삼마단단지 쉬나 또 여면도 삼 시바인스.
But I think that this is very important to know from the broader view of this whole teachings of Buddhism. Otherwise, some people, coming or seeing other traditions being practiced and done in that way might be able to, might not able to appreciate that one. Instead, may accumulate some bad karma by denigrating or saying some bad things about that thing. So it's important to know the whole view of Buddhism and how these Buddhisms are being practiced in these different teachings. Otherwise, if I just go straight into the text and explain it word by word, these things will not come into there. So with these words, I will stop here for today. Thank you. And from tomorrow, we will go into the text of the Heart Sutra. And now we have a few minutes left. So if you have any questions, you can ask now.
If you have your question, please raise your hand. And when your name is called, please start your video and unmute yourself. Or you can type your question in the chat box.
No, nothing.
Looks like we have one question here from Yang Chen Dronka. I don't know. She didn't type it. She says, my question is, and then she didn't type anything.
My question is, maybe she is typing. Oh, my question is continue.
I don't have much faith because of science. Much faith in Buddhism? 생리기 겜베 겜신nga kalor tepa de iji tesa mes la veinsare tak chö lagi yurwa.
Kendiri vese. Inji miji ngazo ke nongche nonglo la one depi jendo da ontul depi jendo da one chöchi jendo se ni yores. Tichidi kasole nongche cheba la inji miji teparang tondoge ke maras choron simju chene netsu gain bade hakotna tara nongchores.
In Buddhism, we don't really have faith for everything, and we normally have this one for the lower level of capacity. The entrance into the or practice into the Buddhism is through faith, while for the higher caliber or the sharper faculties, they can do it through the Dharma. So in this way, if you don't have faith in Dharma, you can still do it by investigating the reality of the things, and through that way you can do it.
저런le 대바 매바 이나 디그레 이나야 녜바도 녜비네도 가히 받도 또 도비게 혈압이 녜바가 그래서.
It's okay if you don't have faith in the Buddha Dharma, but must have this wisdom or this discriminating wisdom to understand, to discriminate the reality of all the things. That is a must to investigate the things.
Okay.
Does anybody have a question?
sama 차차네 있어.
Looks like everything is clear
Yeah,
to
sure.
everybody.
너 tamboya 가면 됐어. sama 차차.
Yeah. That you got it. JK Karina Detua
Yamago.
Gosuma Doje.
Krishnamurti views, that Krishnamurti views kares la gorda.
되네. 다 매르베.
There's someone raised with the hand raising, so maybe Madhav Viji, can you unmute yourself?
Madhavji.
Namaste, Tashi Delhi. I had a question regarding actually the emptiness, right? Obviously, we keep saying there's no self, but what are we? I mean, are we an energy? How do we explain that? I mean, when we're sitting here, we're something, right? We are something. Obviously, I'm listening to you. You're talking to me. You know, there's something going on here, right? So what are we actually? Are we type of energy being? What are we? I mean, I'm just trying to figure that out.
Okay, the Tony did score Chivajins. Only is some much time to Tony the Shigo, and I want to deal a dead air, and want to get a Shigo or Ningo or the doors. That Tony 사마토니 나 먼저 유대행의 가르레 시대행의 년대행의 가르레 네베랑 신지레베 가르레베스
다들 선언이 또야요레스 또니 세비가설레 이어 말했은 라기어 말했어 배낭아 저게 지금 저공거라는 이 근데 그 짠이 고 가서 통화좀해봐 리좀해봐 근데 제레스네 라기어 말했어 또니 세비가설레 배나처럼 야셰네 단다파돌라 나 가서 민가래 마다비치 셰디니 단다파돌레 나찍 나라랑 주아짜니 매댕에 나찍 드니지요 삼대야 내지지 여 말했으니까 이제 텔라 똥이 세고요레스 저런 마셰디 카포카보야 댕에 따가댕에 드니지제 여 말아스 단다 저런 같은 주아탑이야 탭자래 이날 저런 주아태야 초투고요 말았어 저런 아마란자이 마체디니 단다파돌레 찌기 삼대야 대 많이 받들라 똥이 쓰라고 그랬어
emptiness actually doesn't mean that it's nothing. It's not there. We're not denying anything. It's not like a hair on a rabbit, horn on the rabbit's hair. The rabbit doesn't have a horn, right? So it's not like emptiness, not like that. That's nothingness, not nothingness. What we are saying about emptiness is emptiness, not something that's something unitary or something that you think that it is like that. For example, you as Madhavji, you right now, a white beard and these things. But when you were born, you were not like that. You were born as a small child. At the time, you don't have this beard, and probably at that time you have more hair than now, But when you think about it, we think that you, for example, for you, think that you are the same person that you were born, and you're the same person that you were at that small young age. But that's not the way. That's not the one that's being taught in this emptiness.
No, I understand that. What I'm trying to figure out is we're impermanence. I understand impermanence, independent rising. I understand all these concepts, right? But when we're meditating, we're sitting here meditating on the pus, the urine, all these things that we're attaching on, which is just nothing, right? I mean, we're grabbing on, attaching to things that they're not giving us nothing but suffering, correct? I understand these concepts. I understand that. But when we are, we're suffering because of karma, correct? I mean, obviously we had some kind of merit to just become a human, right? We have a precious human life. I understand all these concepts. I understand, but what I'm trying to understand is when you're in meditation and you're in tugdom, whatever the case is, to go to the highest level possible. How do we realize, what are we? I mean, we've got to be some type of energy moving from stage to stage. Impermanence, there is impermanence, I understand, but we're constantly changing, right? We have to be some type of energy, something, right? Moving through stages and paths, through consciousness and so on and so forth. I'm just trying to figure out what Tibetan Buddhism describes us as, an energy being, what are we? We're something, obviously, changing consciousness all the time. We're impermanence in somewhere, somehow. I understand that, but I'm just trying to figure out, that is my ultimate I'm trying to figure out. Maybe you guys can shine a light on it.
디하고도 시단계 타마 메탁바 임바다 테네직 동네와 임바다 고매야바도 하고도 이나 당은주니 찍니 야본 교지 주디 당은주 타마된 건주도 가르레스 다 찍 종해지어로 왔다 디 타마된 뉴베랑 신지르베스다 다 패치 그 라일레 지나 당은주 미규만이 야직 사토로지 산지 고반도 톱도 주고요나 다 가르 주고요 듣기지더지 인사다 다 가르 디날 가르여스다 먼저 다야마 동해지 다여로 다직 개와드니 치마다 데니디야 지 네 토르 줘야 돼 지해야 돼 네베랑 신지르베 다 가리레스 누구여레스 데드비 지버리스다 그던다 동도
딜라 삼탄타 자고 간다지라 그래서나 네 저랑게 소소소소 가리인 하고 보면은 소소소소를 좋아하니까나 아니 렌더란도 가버리스 nga suredu, nga kawadu. Choron Karili Munjigdo, so nga sa samno tong de casole, ngole samno tangidu, lakwala sang tong de, kombala samno tangidu, yona ngo da lapa da kompa kaya mandi pa nga singi chi yanda ki le yaba sangidu. Choron so nga se munji jesate kawala chigidu sayake. Ani nga suredu, nga kandiridu. Ani yona da nga yaba yiga choron samno tangi yorwas. Techidikas nga te kawadu. 단다 저런 캄바테는 여바산의 동거는 캄바테는 yana 가와도 냉고 띵알 연나스 냉고 들라 yana 근데 저런 그 라파드렌도 콤바드렌도 레레레네 가완도 대마이바 대 차통 생기진도에 간데스네 저런 나스렌도 나 가완도 세야기 저완이 단에 테길랜드 세다 아니 저런 로데야 데 간데임바 여다메 아니 간데임바 랜지라도 가버렸어.
So maybe we can look that into two different ways, like to identify who we are, who I am. First, first question is, who am I and where am I? So if in that way, think about these things, then you will kind of understand who you really identify with, that I, and if you think that you are here in this room and I'm sitting on this cushion, then check who is that one that's sitting on that cushion. Is that your body, that one? And if it's your body, which part of the body? And if you probably look at that way, then might get an answer who you really refer to that I to.
It's a constant changing thing. I understand it, but there's an energy here, right? We're energy, we're something. I understand I'm changing. Every a nanosecond I'm changing. Is there, I know there's Abhidhamma, right? Is there a book that you, a writer that that you could recommend that could read the Abhidhamma, that could explain it a little bit more in detail?
하고도 계지 교화 임바됐다. 하고도 이나 양은도 수인에 찍더라도 성주 될 두어스 대지 배제 뇌배랑 신자부지 인사를
네 주요가르스 계제 세금에스 저런 찐 누아세 되는데 가화도 세다 간드레스 저런 근거들에 깜바들에 라바들에 아니 대초 많이 봐 얌바지레 대산나 땅다스.
So if you think that you obviously is somebody because you are here listening here something, so then investigate that thing to find out where that is. Is that the part, which part of that is that a head, that the hands, that the body, that the leg, or which, if you investigate that way,
Okay, so I guess what Kenshin La said, we're all in a dream. So, when you wake up in the dream, you were never here actually, and you laugh, right? So it's basically something like that. I just got to keep investigating and see what really the truth is. In meditation, through experiential way is the only way. That's what you're saying, right?
켄젤라가 소야라니 먼저 정말 이름그 내가블 여바다 직발을 라고도 같이 남편이 야춘이 이 마세베 이름 내가 되다 직발을 라고도 오늘의 지내니 지기 곰자 디치는 지기야 이름 세야 지기 여바듯이 라고 여서도 디다 님도 대신 그거니 아비다마 다 추응음박이 돈나 배적 거리 지기 서지스야 요나스 장애 돌아
ngaba dela ngaba koma do omas ni yore ngaba koma ko ondo chi techen ke ondo chi bi ke ngaba jona ni ngaba kunti sa na batende ta ko kete chi yores ni ko charama to dode ba ke kete chi bi ke yiga bi ke ni ko tepa member ke ngaba da chena ni ngaba je te to za dan da ba yore te to jona ya ba yores.
So regarding the Abhidharma text that you're talking about, there are mainly two types of Abhidharma text. One is part of the Mahayana, and that is the Abhidharma Samuchaya. And the other one is mainly based on the Vaibhashika and Svatantrika, that's Abhidharma Koshakarika. And both of these texts you can get with many different commentaries on it too.
Yeah, I was talking about the higher school one.
Higher school ones. Yeah, that's
which one would he recommend? Which translator would Rinpoche recommend? That's what I was asking, because there was plenty to choose from. I didn't know which one that he would recommend for me to read.
공마디 거를 지기 위해서 뭐 공마디니 망고지 여바다 하고선데 이나다 간디 믹스 장나 배졌다 줄도 유교나 간디 장나 야가 요나스. 거대하여나서 야가여나서.
다 토메 그 손잡이 그거만 컨티되는데 야슈레스 다 디게 단다데 베게 변에 놓는 따거나 매파는 뭐 지금 제비기 킹유데 따이나야 보여레스.
So the Abhidharma Samuchaya was composed by the Asanga, and among the Tibetan text, the one that composed by Mepam Rinpoche, Gateway to Knowledge.
Okay.
That's mainly about explanation about that Abhidharma Samuchaya. So if you can read and study that one, it's easy to understand and maybe better ones.
Okay, Gateway. Yeah, I wrote that down earlier. I just couldn't find it on Amazon. So I have to look up, see if I can find it. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seems like Mary has a question. Mary, could you please unmute yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me clearly? Okay, great. Sorry, I'm not in a good spot. So Ken Rinpoche, thank you very much for your kind teachings and for the great translation. And so I had one question. I'm not sure my video will work. I'm so sorry. When you were speaking about the wrathful deities with the example of protecting a child, that the wrathfulness is, like protecting a child, it made me want a clarification between love and compassion, meaning looking to be clear about when compassion rises versus love. So, for example, the four immeasurables include love and compassion as different qualities. So I'm just requesting, please, if I may ask, please request your clarification between love and compassion. Thank you very much.
초기다 신제 시작에 거슬러야 빼들어야 아니 부고 춘주질어야 아니 지게 다다 부고 충원 야부시 맞이나 지게야 지 좋은 거는 지게 뇌까지 시었어 다 들어야 아니 뒤탑 들으시디 아니 참다 닝진하는 니 거는 조고도스 닝진간 조고는 참바도 전화네 참바들 지디 참다 니거도 체매 시간 조고도스 디가도 체매 시간 제베 지시디 잠났어지
이게 단데 이렇게 가능성.
no.
So
the question you're asking is, you want explanation of the four immeasurables, or you're trying to see whether there is a relation between these four immeasurables?
No, I'm simply requesting to know, in the case of the wrathful deities, when we're talking about the compassion of the wrathful deities and the example of towards a child, like protectively towards a child, sometimes it seems like parents love their children, so therefore they protect them. So I'm just trying to understand kind of the subtle difference between, or maybe it's not subtle, but I'm just trying to clarify the difference between love and compassion. And maybe it's too big of a question, but I wasn't sure. So I just was trying to understand kind of the difference between love and compassion.
참다 닝지기 대발라오라 참다 님지기 개바지라오라 하나 군인 얘기 지 디시시게부터 그래서 다 가지면 또 나야 돼.
네. 잠바생인데 나도 예 샘켄데 저 남바데 가리게 거르스나 아니 대활 기 톱나 삼바기 그 삼로틱 토니 잠바생인데 게게 거래 닌제생인데 동할 다 다나 삼바기 아니 초니 게게 거래 다나 대와데 대나 동하다 다 거래 동하다 다나 대와데 대용 거래 그 남바데 코만다 바레 마도 단토니 코니 게 젤레서 말하면 로타나 보다 다나
Both love and compassion, in the end, they have the same result or the same one, but in the different aspects. Because when you talk about love, that is a mind of some other beings. If they can have happiness, so you may pray that all the sentient being has this happiness. That is the aspect of the love. Whereas in compassion, all the sentient beings may be free from sufferings. That is the compassion. So whether in the end, when you are free from sufferings, you have this happiness. When you have this happiness, you are free from suffering. In the end, it comes same.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That helped. Very good clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, that's the last question for today. So for the rest question in the chat box, we will continue asking tomorrow. And now we will do dedication leading by Tuku Rinpoche. One moment.
Okay, so we'll do now dedication. So please, Anna, can you share that on the screen? Yeah. Okay, so that you can see the dedication of beneficial activity. So we'll read this in Tibetan first, and then later in English. Then we can read all together and make it aspirations according to its instruction, how it is guiding here. Sonam de Anje Sivani, Tomne Nyebe Dana Namje, Shega Nanje Walan Trubai, Sibi Tolen Doan Dovarsho, Jambal Pawe Chitra Kimba, Kundu Zambo Deyan Dejende, Teda Kunji Jesu Daloji, Gewan Deda Tanje Radungo, Gewan De Shewo, Sonam Yeshe Todone, Sonam Yeshe Lejunwe, Tamba Kunyi Pobresh, Sanje Kusum Nyebe Chinlanda, Chenye Mingurun Dembe Chinlanda, Gendun Meche Dembe Chinlabi, Jidra Mawa Mandubar Show. We read in English now. By this beneficial activity, may I obtain omniscience, and having vanquished the harmful enemies, greed, anger, delusion, may I liberate all being tossed about helplessly by the waves of birth, aging, illness, and death in the ocean of becoming. By conforming to the knowledge of courageous Manjushri, Jambalyang, and in the same way as Samandabhadra, Kundusombo, and following their example, I dedicate perfectly all this virtue. By this virtue, may all beings perfectly achieve the accumulation of merit, Sonam, and wisdom, Yeshe, and may they thereafter obtain the two holy bodies, which result from this two accumulation. By the blessing of the Buddha, Sanjay, who obtained the three bodies, by the blessing of the immutable truth of the Dharmata, Chunyi, by the blessing of the infallible aspiration of the Sangha, Gendun, may this prayer of dedication be accomplished just as it is. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll stop here tonight, and then we'll get back again tomorrow, same time, Eastern time, 7 p.m. So till then, take care. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lama.
Thank you.
Thank you, Khenpo.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Wow.
Judiche, Kadinche.